بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So we started talking about isti'adha, or saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Yesterday we discussed the fact that Ibn Kathir was mentioning in various ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us how to deal with others. And others can be broken down into people and shayateen. So when it comes to human beings, the commandment is to be nice, to win people over through akhlaq and character. So this is one weapon amongst the weapon of believers, just to be good to people, and you will win them over, as is mentioned in those ayat. However, regarding the shayateen, we are commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to seek His protection, because these are different types of individuals who have different goals in mind, and their ultimate goal is to follow Iblis, who is their head, and his goal is to lead all of humanity astray. So when you're dealing with an individual whose goal is so sinister, you have no other option but to seek the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Imam Ibn Kathir, he goes into some different aspects of fiqh, which is his want. He usually does this. So he has this one masala here about when does one say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And he brings it up naturally because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. When you recite Quran, then say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, which is the ayah. When you recite Quran, then fasta'idh, and the letter fa in Arabic means then. So this ayah actually implies that A'udhu billah should be post recitation. Right? The actual content of the ayah is saying when you have read, qara'ta is a past tense. Right? When you have already recited Quran, then seek the protection of Allah from the accursed shaitan. There's a literal translation of the ayah. Because of this, many scholars have even stated that A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim should be recited after the recitation, not before. This is the literal words of the Quran. So he says, قَالَ طَائِفَةٌ مِنَ الْقُرَّاءِ وَغَيْرُهُمْ يُتَعَوَّذُ بَعْدَ الْقِرَاءَةِ. Many qurra, meaning those who transmit the Quran in the chain, who we have received the Quran from them, they say A'udhu Billah after your recitation. What is their proof? The literal words of the ayah. That's their proof. اعتمدوا على ظاهر سياق الآية. The ayah is saying that. And their rationale behind it. So there's always a literal proof or a textual proof, and then you will find scholars talking about rationale as well. They inspect all of these, like, why is it like this? Right? Our ultimate goal is to follow Quran and Hadith, the textual evidences, but Allah never tells us not to seek out reasons. Right? So they look at it. He says, وَلِدَفْعِ الْإِعْجَابِ بَعْدَ فَرَاغِ الْعِبَادَةِ. What is the rationale? You might be thinking, why read A'udhu Billah after you're done? Why not before? The reason, he says, when you recite well, right, you've learned tajweed, you recited well, you're thinking about Allah, you're pondering, contemplating over the contents of what you recited, you might have what's called i'jab, or conceit, like, I did a good job. You give yourself a pat on the shoulder and you think that you've accomplished something really great. He says, لِدَفْعِ الْإِعْجَابِ بَعْدَ فَرَاغِ الْعِبَادَةِ. You should not have this feeling after worship. Because all of us, in every single act of worship, there is faults. The fact that you and I are not even aware of that is another fault. So we're just filled with faults. Our salah just now, can we actually say there was not a millisecond where our minds went away from the topic at hand? No, not at all. I don't think anyone's performed a salah like that except a Nabi or a Siddiq. Right? Especially us. So he's saying that is a rationale. Recite A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim after, you're basically saying, oh Allah, don't let shaitan come and ruin this ibadah. I just finished this recitation and I want it to be khalis and pure, and I want my intention to be only for you. He is obviously going to come, whisper in my ears, and say, what a great recitation. What a beautiful melody. What this and this and this, and it happens. Right? All of us experience something like this. We do something good, we're proud of ourselves, alhamdulillah. but he starts to twist that, turn it around, and makes it a tool against our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the rationale. And he quotes some different individuals. He says Imam Hamza, Imam Abu Hatim al-Sijistani, other names he mentions that they actually had this opinion. He says this is not the famous opinion, however. So actually the famous opinion is not the literal words of Quran. That's why tafsir is so important. He's going to mention what is the actual tafsir of this ayah. It's not to be taken in its literal understanding. But that is a literal understanding. Once you have recited Quran, then say A'udhu Billah. So that's why a group have taken that view. He says here that there's another opinion. I'm just skipping through all the names of the chain of narration. He says from Imam Malik, from others as well, أن القارئ يتعوذ بعد الفاتحة. So this is another opinion that you should say it after Surah Al-Fatiha before the other recitation, because again, this ayah. Another opinion is you should say A'udhu Billah in the beginning and ending. In the beginning and ending. However, these are all not very famous. The four madhahib and what we have received through all of the various different scholarship in the past is that it should be in the very beginning. And so now what is the proof of this? Because we've basically said the Quran is saying something else. So he says, Al-mashhur alladhi alayhi al-jumhur anna al-isti'adata innama takunu qabla al-tilawa. Isti'adah should be done before the tilawah starts. He first gives a rationale. What is the rationale? لِدَفْعِ الْوِسْوَاسِ فِيهَا. The real reason why we say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim is to remove the wasawis before starting recitation. Recitation is an action that is not just verbal. It's supposed to take over a person's mind and their emotion and the verbal. So it's supposed to be an all-encompassing type of worship. The reason why it's not necessarily the case with us is because we don't know Arabic so well, and also our comprehension is very low. If you and I were to learn the Arabic of the Quran, then when we would engage in recitation, it's actually a reading of the Quran, but there's an emotional component. You're reading it aloud, you're trying to use the best melody as possible, and when you are reflecting over the contents, it affects you emotionally, and you're mentally stimulated as well. So this is what real recitation should be all about, and this is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam preached to the Sahaba. He always told them to have comprehension, be aware of what you're reciting. This is not to say that you and I shouldn't recite if we're not understanding. You should absolutely recite. There's plenty of ahadith where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam states, every single letter that you read, you're going to get 10 rewards. He doesn't put the condition of comprehension there. So if you don't even understand what you're reading, and you're just reading, you're going to get 10 rewards for every letter. So that's enough for you to realize that, this is a good thing that I should not give up. Now, the sentiment usually when people hear this, that you need to understand and comprehend Quran, they say, well, I'm just going to give up then, because it's just too hard. That should not be our sentiment. Our sentiment should be, I'm getting a lot of reward, I'm going to keep the recitation. At the same time, I'm going to ponder, I'm going to find out what the translation is. So you can have, like, whatever page you're on in the Quran, side by side, a English translation, read the Arabic, and then read the English, or whatever language you're comfortable with. That way you'll combine the two. Anyway, so he says, what is the real purpose of the isti'adha according to the majority of scholars? Before reciting, the mind has to be clear. Because you're about to engage in this very high level ibadah, these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the divine words. The Quran is divinely revealed from Allah. They contain within them deep meanings, extremely deep meanings. There's another hadith where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions that the Quran has an outward aspect and an inward aspect. The outward aspect is literally the translation. What you read in a translation, that's the outward. The inward is when you ponder over that, where your mind will lead you, what lessons you extract, how to apply this in your daily life, how it emotionally changes you. This is also part of tilawah. This second aspect cannot be attained if you are being troubled by just daily affairs. Someone said something mean to you, you feel disheartened. You had a tough day at work, you feel disheartened. At home, things are not going the way you want. You're a little bit hungry, maybe you're fasting. So many different things Shaitan utilizes that to create a barrier between you and your recitation. So we say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, to cut all of that off. And if you're pondering over this, and you truly believe that Allah will save me from shaitan's evil plots, inshallah, it'll grant you clarity in your thought process, then you start off on a clean slate. As many of you know, if you try to read a book and you're contemplating something, or something's troubling you, you won't be able to comprehend. Your mind's not gonna be involved. So you need a clear mind before you start. So that's what he's saying. The majority of the scholars are saying it's for daf'ul waswas, to remove the wasawis or the whisperings of shaitan before you even start. And now he's going to respond to the group of scholars who used فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. When you recite the Qur'an, then seek Allah's protection from the accursed shaitan. He's going to respond to them as like, what answer do we give to that? If the Qur'an is saying this, how can we say otherwise? And this shows you scholarship is necessary. Sometimes someone will come up to you, well, here's a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ is saying you have to lift your hands before ruku', after ruku', etc., which is a valid opinion. Now he shows you it's in Bukhari. Now you're like, well, I'm not doing that. That means my salah is not counting. What he's not telling you is there's another hadith that says that he didn't do it. So what do you do? Right? So it's dishonest, I think, if you do that. I'm not saying that's not valid. That is a valid opinion, Imam Shafi'i, etc. But the other is also valid. So if someone only gives you the literal translation and he hides what other scholars have said whilst that person knowing, then they're kind of messing with you. And I don't think that is legitimate for a person to do, especially a Muslim to another Muslim. So now what does it mean? He say, إِذَا أَرَدْتَ الْقِرَاءَ. So there is in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't mention every single word. What this means is there's different styles of speech. As you all know, in poetry, sometimes they remove certain words to create a stronger emphasis, right? Everyone knows, not everyone knows, but there was this movie, it's called Star Wars, right? And there was a character in Star Wars, his name is Yoda. Right? He's this wise, green little alien. He speaks in a way, all he does is he takes the beginning of the sentence, he puts it in the end, and takes the end of the sentence and puts it in the beginning, and he sounds very profound. He'll say, instead of I am hungry, he'll say, hungry I am. And he'll speak like this. Everything he says is like this. So it creates a profound feeling when you alter certain things. So that, I know that's a silly comparison in front of Quran, but sometimes we need these kind of things. So in the Quran, sometimes all the words in a full sentence, some of them are omitted to create a stronger meaning. So he's saying here the actual meaning of when you recite is when you intend recitation. The word intend is in there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say it because He doesn't have to write out everything for you. This was understood by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba. And that is why we find them saying A'udhu Billah in the very beginning. So the actual meaning of the ayah is when you intend recitation, then seek the protection of Allah from the accursed shaitan. This way, we understand this is before. So I'm intending the recitation, and then I'll say A'udhu Billah. If I didn't even intend recitation, why would I say A'udhu Billah? So when you're intending, you have the Quran, you open it up, that's your intention. Now before the recitation, A'udhu Billahi minash shaitanir rajim. That's what the ayah actually means. He says there's another ayah like this, and this is a proof for us. The ayah is in Surah Al-Ma'idah. إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ. This is the ayah, it's ayah number 6 in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the verse of wudu. Everyone knows wudu. So, easy question, can a person perform salah without wudu? He doesn't have wudu, can he? I don't think no Muslim has ever said this. What does the ayah say? When you stand for salah, wash your face and your hands. The ayah saying when you stand, you're standing. The imam's there. Everyone's made the line. Now wash yourself. When you stand for salah, wash your face and your hands. So you cannot take the literal meaning because the ayah is omitting a certain word. This ayah actually means when you intend standing for salah, the intention is that salah time it's occurred. The mu'adhin has called the adhan. I'm making an intention for salah. Go do the wudu. Then you come for salah. He says it's just like that, and everyone agrees on this ayah that this means when you intend standing for salah. So this shows you that there's a little bit more than just the apparent. If you and I just open up a translation of Quran, yes, you'll get a huge portion. There are some verses though we're gonna need a little bit more understanding of what the scholars have stated. So inshallah we'll stop here. He has a lot of these fiqhi aspects, which is quite interesting for us because if we're not aware of like how the scholars debated in fiqh, different opinions, where their proofs are from, it kind of opens your eyes to scholarship as well. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq to give us this understanding, appreciation of all of our scholars, and understanding of Quran. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So a question came 3 days ago. So I was advising people how to make the saf when because there were a couple of groups that formed separate, gathered at separate places. So alhamdulillah, we're clear that we're making the saf where people come, they should start from the center and expand on each side. So the question came, what do the sisters do? They're on the other side. If they are in saf, the sister comes later, where is she supposed to start the second saf?
It would also be in the center there, because ideally it's the center of the imam.
Right?
So yeah.
That was the confusion.
Yeah, ideally it's a large place, and then if we had, inshallah in the future we'll have a barrier in the middle, and then they're directly behind. But since it's kind of skewed a little bit, they're going to imagine that the imam is in the center of where they are, so they will just build from there. And because the roof is one, they could actually be any position and they'll be part of the salah. It doesn't matter that they have it would be a problem if there's separate buildings. So that, according to some scholars, if you have separate complete buildings, then it causes a problem with connecting with the salah. But if there's one roof that's connecting everything, then it's not an issue. They could actually be very far away, it wouldn't be a problem.
So example is taqwa.
Yeah, so there could be an issue over there. According to some of the Hanafi madhab, it actually says in the very the primers, like the very simple books of the Hanafi madhab, if there's enough space between two buildings or areas that doesn't have a common roof, that you can ride a boat in between, then this would cause a problem in the connection of the salah. So it is a problem, but other madhabs will allow it. In the Maliki madhab, they don't have a problem with it, as long as you're aware of the imam's condition, which they are. Now if they, the TV wasn't working, the sound system stopped working, then their salah would be broken. As long, in the Maliki madhab, I believe, if they're aware of the imam, which they are, then that salah would be correct. So then they would have to take the Maliki opinion in that regard. Question?
What if it's like different floors on the same building?
If it's the same building but a different floor, it's fine, because a masjid technically is in the sky and underneath. So that's why you can't build a masjid in rental properties or an apartment building. You can't make a masjid. You have to own that land, because above the masjid and below is still the masjid. So people can be on top of the roof, or in many masajid, al-Faruq, etc., the sister side is on a different level. That's completely fine. And they should not cross. You might have noticed some places where if it's a complete floor above and you can actually stand in front of the imam, they're not allowed to stand there. There will be some kind of barricade, like right here, saying that imam is there, don't go in front. So they can stand behind that. That would be fine. Okay, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I think that was fine. That was just questions.